Okay, let's get started. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. It's very nice to be able to give our presentation again. We gave it at the beginning of the year, now we're at the end of the year. And looking back on our year, it's been a real year of IB learning. We are an IB school, an International Baccalaureate school. We have 4 authorised programmes, and this photo was taken when we got our authorisation, the final 4th authorisation for the 4th programme, which was the IBCC. So these are our children. This was taken in May last year, which wasn't very popular at the time because it was really, really hot, even though it was about 8:30 in the morning. But this is what our school is. It's an International Baccalaureate school, a world school. And the IB is, this is the IB mission. This is what we run our school on. It permeates through everything that we do. What it is really about is intercultural understanding and respect. Respect for each other and respect between teachers and students and teachers, parents. It's a feeling of mutual respect. And what we feel is our school is very special in that we develop our students to reach their potential. And this is why we feel that the IB is a curriculum to meet the needs of all learners. I brought along our head of primary school, Bridget Justin, and our head of secondary school, Obi Seeley, who will talk a little bit more about the specifics of the programme. But the big picture is that the IB curriculum actually provides everything that every student needs. We differentiate, but it's the big feeling of what it is we want our students to be. We want them to be international learners and good people, people who should be on our planet, who take an active part in their learning. And to me, this is a very, very important part of education. This is what it's all about. Okay, thank you. The whole school, I'll wait till people have left. This is the most important part of the programme. It's called the learner profile, and it's, if you like, it's the base of the whole curriculum. Everything we do is based on this. The IB came from some people about 20 years ago looking at what is an international curriculum. Is it a certain syllabus, or is it how we feel about the students and what we want them to be? And after lots of discussion, they took the focus away from this is what you need to learn to this is what you need to be a good person, to be a contributing person on the planet. And so this is the basis of the whole curriculum. This goes throughout the whole school. So this is called the learner profile, and this is the base. You can see this up in all our classrooms because our teachers talk about these attributes to the students. What does it mean to be open-minded? What does it mean to be a communicator? What does it mean to be principled? And we actually talk about this to our children and explain to them what it means. And of course you can. Yes, help yourself. No problem at all. So looking at what does this look like? And this just doesn't go into the classroom. This actually goes out onto the playground. It goes on the bus. It goes through everything we do. How do we get our children to be thinking about things? So of course this impacts on the methodology of the teaching. And Bridget's going to be talking a little bit about that later. So this is the most important thing about the whole curriculum. And at the end of the presentation, we're going to show you a short video that will give you a little bit more detail about it. But this is actually what we focus on. This is what we value at our school. We value our diversity. We have 86 nationalities. We have 50 languages being spoken in the school. English is the medium of instruction. We value our gifted and talented students and our children with specific educational needs. We value all students. And it's looking to see how can we take the child from where they are to fulfill their potential, and how do we do that? So we look very individually at the children. I'm going to show you a short video clip of one of our children who was diagnosed with having very specific educational needs. And this is a child that had been rejected from a lot of schools. So what we do is we look at what are the expectations of our curriculum, how can we adapt that for him, and how can we make him an open-minded, balanced person? How can we refer back to the profile and say that is what we want him to be? we'll just play this for you. We hope. And this is where the technology doesn't work. Anyway, never mind, I'll just talk about it. This is actually a student that is bilingual, and he has somebody with him all the time. He does an adapted curriculum, but he's still expected to do the same as other students. So he's still expected to present, he's still expected to think about what he's doing, he's still expected to have the same expectations, but at a different level. And what happens is, our students respect that child. He's one of the rest of them. And so this goes back again to our learner profile. This is being caring, reflective, tolerant, all those attributes that we want as people, as good people on the planet. We do have another, oh, there we go. Okay, you can stop it there, that's fine. He says it in English, and then he goes into Arabic. And as you can see, he's just accepted as part of our school. And to me, this is a very, very important part of our school, that all children have a place in our school. We can provide for them because we use the learner profile as the basis for our curriculum. The other end, if you like, if you want to look at it that way, is a student very gifted and talented who actually gave a presentation here at the What Works. Very, very talented physics student doing the same thing. We value students who are doing things in assembly, who are standing there with their colleagues, and then we value students like this. But we're still going back to the learner profile. How are we using the learner profile to develop our students in this way? That's fine, thank you. The learner profile is a crucial part of meeting the needs of all our students across the school. Now I'm going to hand over to Bridget, who'll talk to you a little bit about how we actually put that into place. What does the teaching methodology look like? It's based on inquiry. So I'll pass over to Bridget. I'll actually give you this as well. I don't know if it's working.
Well, good morning to you. Thank you. I joined GCS last year. I've had the pleasure of traveling many countries for the IB, both in national schools and international schools. And I'd just like to say, following on from Ms. Hollington, that when I look at the development of our children to become the potential and reach the potential that they each possess, I think it's very critical as we look at diversity in our schools. Where is it that we can provide the additional support, be it at the extended gifted end, be it the remedial end? How do we also embrace and promote to all children our differences and our similarities? When I was in the U.S., we had 3 schools within my school. One of them was for severely learning impaired children at the time, and it was about all of our community recognizing, as Ms. Hollington said, we're one school, and the more we learn about each other, as we grow into adults, the more understanding we are of one another and see the value that each person can bring to our society. So I have a very strong passion for the IB, because as we move into the explanation about learning through inquiry, for me it's critical about developing children's voices. Not just learning facts. That is important. A solid foundation is critical. But going beyond the rote learning and acquiring of new knowledge and using that new knowledge and having the new knowledge have an impact on ourselves and others. So when you hear the word inquiry, please don't, as you look at the list that's going to come up, interpret it that it might be wandering freely, investigating freely. That would be a very misgiving impression that I would leave with you. Really what our inquiry is teachers are facilitators. Teachers do develop sound basic skills with their children in literacy and numeracy. Absolutely. To be an educated person, to communicate, you need those skills to have a career in the future. But what's important with the inquiry is where are we going, and what at your different developmental stages are you going to explore and investigate? And what type of questions are you going to ask? If you go back, for any of us that have been parents or are currently parents, when the children are toddlers, what do? They're filled with questions. They're filled with wonderings. It's natural. What happens when they come to school? Do we perpetuate that interest and that wandering and that inquisitiveness? Does it get a bit dampened through our structure, through our approach to teaching and learning? So let's take a look at inquiry very quickly. We have what's called units of inquiry, our program of inquiry, all right? Let me stand over here so you can see, pardon me. So I want you to just think of, maybe in your schools or maybe from past experiences, you've had thematic units. The units of inquiry are very detailed. There's a task that the adults have, the teachers have, to create central ideas, to create what are we going to inquire into. And then we need to take from our youngest children, 3, 4-year-olds, and start helping them develop questioning, wondering. We bring a topic, we give enough information to get an introduction started. Then we start interacting with one another. What do we want to learn about this? Any of you, how many of you are very young, kindergarten, early childhood teachers? Like say 3-year-olds through 6, 7-year-olds. All right, so think about also helping children develop questioning skills. A lot of times we'll ask for questions, we'll get stories in the very beginning. And those stories go on. And then we come back. Well, what constitutes a good question? A yes or no question? No. It doesn't take us further. So when you look, we start driving and directing the children to a large degree, but then they use their natural inquisitiveness, their natural desire for inquiry, and we start really getting them involved. And I think what's very critical when you see engaging self and others, I'm going to talk very briefly about it. One of the aspects of the IB Primary Years program that I value highly, besides helping children develop their voice and knowing how to use it with different audiences, it's also about life skills. Collaborating, don't you all have to do that in your lives, your professions? Negotiating, compromising, problem solving. When we're engaging others, this is what starts to happen. As the children will take a unit of inquiry, and this group might have an inquiry that's a bit different from this group, and I'm the facilitator, so I'm moving through, confirming that you have the resources you need, coming back as a large group for our central idea, fanning back out again to these elements that are part of the central idea with a little bit different inquiry. So here you have about shaping, reshaping, and learning to also be a great listener, a contributor, a leader, a follower. I think these are skills that I wish when I was a child I could have learned much earlier in my life. And that's what we're bringing to our children, along with excellent foundation skills. I keep coming back to that, so it's not misrepresenting the program. And then as we're coming down into support of own and other ideas, again, we're doing a lot of research. We're bringing new information to gather, to share, to discuss, to promote an opinion, to clarify and verify, or to find out, no, that one's not quite on target, but with my new information, this is. And then quite often we conclude our units through, well, we start with formative assessment, we'll go on to that shortly, and then summative, and that's where we're using and demonstrating our new knowledge. Just look at this quietly for a moment, and I'll pick out if there's something that hasn't been talked about. There's a level of autonomy, but as I mentioned, you're still part of a group and you're part of the class. And you have a responsibility for your part as well as being part of a group. Research is a lot. You also see the word manipulative. We're fortunate, I think Ms. Hollington, we're very fortunate at our school in the Talim organization to have good resources. And we keep expanding and building those resources to go with our units. We reflect on our units, we adjust them, we look at the cohort of children. Are we challenging them enough? Is it appropriate for the age? We're constantly reflecting as the educators of how we see and what we learn about the children's progress with what we're doing. You continue going in and about cognitive terminology. Yes, in fact, we also do within our units is where we do a lot of transdisciplinary approaches, obviously with the reading, with the writing, presenting, listening, science, math, So picture it this way, the way I grew up, subject-based. We're doing math. It's 10 o'clock. We're moving to science. So that's quite different in our program because it's woven within for giving authentic learning and application, but there's definitely direct instruction as well to build the skills to get to the point of applying it. Continuing, going on then, what does it look like in the classroom? Concept-based understanding. It's a big focus. This is where our children in primary, we have about 75% of our children will come to are presently in our school that have English as another language. So when we get into concept-based understanding, I'm working with the teachers to make certain when we've provided English support and developed year after year, we mustn't get sidetracked that the child can speak socially and interact at a surface level. But to get to concept-based understanding, is their language developed enough to really get that? And how do we do it visually, auditorily, kinesthetically, back to the learning styles to do and use their strengths? The teacher serves as a facilitator and direct instructor at times. Assessment, we've really developed that a great deal at our school now to have very targeted ways of knowing the different aspects of learning that our children are doing. And as I mentioned, they collaborate a great deal. So the next one, let's just take a little bit look here are our first graders. So here we are provoking the inquiry, what could we do with these items? So the teacher has set the stage, but now you notice it's very child-centered. They're young children. They're not sitting at desks at this time. When we do, they're clustered at tables, and those table groups are very flexible. They're not set in groups for a long period of time. They evolve together. They're bringing up their answers, their ideas. They will work together. They will have their own ideas. They'll collaborate. They'll bring ideas out, and the teacher records. And that's used, and that's thinking. That's analyzing. That's sometimes it'll be predicting. Let's go to the last picture, please. This I happened to be present for, and I was so taken by it. Thinking of how we could make rain. Obviously, a unit of inquiry with a science focus. The teacher asked them to sit with their eyes closed and think about, how could you make rain? And of course, what you think the children are doing, I know they must be seeing skies. They might be seeing water at home. They could be seeing a rain. They could be seeing clouds with different colors. How would I make it, though? And then they go from this quiet reflection and thinking, they move into the left-hand picture. We're collaborating now. We're expressing, we're sharing, no matter what my language is. I'm using my first language, I'm using my second to whatever degree I can because we're all part of this. And then you move in, and now we're going to the experimentation side, and that's where we get into the scientific language, the scientific processes. So it's an interesting blend, as you can hear, of some traditional approaches to education, but for me and the way I see it, we're reaching far beyond. We're developing thinkers, confident presenters, and our parents are just amazed, as I have been. We start with these little 3-year-olds, and they just become part of our program with the what we had in our student profile, learner profile attributes, and we talk about that naturally in the learning environment and elsewhere. So that gives you a nice start about how do we implement inquiry, how do we nurture it, and how do we have it develop human beings. Thank you.
How long is that class that you're talking about?
This, how old?
Yeah.
Grade
How
1.
long is that session period?
Well, this session was probably 45 minutes, but you have to remember, sometimes with our 45 minutes, I'll get into questions in a bit. We'll come back to that if you'll raise it again so that Mr. Seeley can share. Thank you.
When the KHDA came out with, and the Dubai School Inspections Bureau came out with Section 4.2 in the new guide, we were over the moon by this as an IB school, because we realized that the IB lends itself very well to a curriculum that meets the needs of all learners. Inquiry is a wonderful thing, and our paradigm shift was going away from the idea of what everybody must know to what each student can do. And that shift was really important because it went away from the teacher being the person who throws this information out to the teacher being a listener and an observer of students' ability and strengthening the ability so that they get that high quality education. In a school, I think Ms. Justin did an excellent job of talking about what the foundation piece is. And the foundation is inquiry. And I think that our students, we see them when they come into grade 6 in our middle years program, the MYP, we see that they're ready for an exploration within a more academic, more rigorously academic in terms of its traditional reading, writing, research, all those sorts of things, because they've used their imagination when they're younger. And there is a lot of really rigorous curriculum in the PYP, please don't mistake. But what we're saying is that the methodology with which the primary years teachers develops that sense of imagination really lends itself very well to what we do in what we call the exploration phase. If you could just go back a few slides for me. Thank you. So then what we do is in our middle years program, you know, we use the same student-centered instruction and we also talk about student choice through what we call exploration. And that's where we start to get into more of a traditional sort of a classroom setting. If you just go to the next slide. What we have is a lot of student choice in our middle years program. We have our traditional academic core. That involves, of course, Arabic, math, science, Englishes, humanities, physical education. We have then exploratory academic core, as we call it, where they can begin to make choices on the types of subjects that they are passionate about. At this stage in their education, these young people are beginning to autonomize. They're beginning to say, I'm very good at this, I'm not particularly good at that. And so when you look at 4.2 in the new DSIB framework, it says basically two things: differentiation, student choice. This is our student choice, where we offer a traditional academic core that all the students do. Then they have some choices within the academic core. Would you like to do design technology, food technology, or information technology? And we begin to offer those choices in grade usually 7 or 8. They start to take some of these choices. And they can choose drama or art or music as they become more specialized. They also offer these electives, and these are free options that they're able to choose. And we offer these on a trimester basis. We have student-led dance, which is one of our most popular electives, where the students themselves become the instructors. And the amount of learning that happens for a student when they instruct other students is phenomenal. It requires a lot of trust, it requires a lot of supervision, but it's really working out really well for us. If you'd move on to the next slide for me. Our IB programs, the PYP and the MYP, everybody does. And then we move on towards the senior years. When they get to grade 10, they now have curricular choices between the IBCC, which is a vocational adaptation of the IB, the traditional IB, and then there's the IB diploma, which is very much a very rigorous university preparatory program. So we have these two programs that are both very, very difficult and challenging, but they're appropriate challenging for the different learning styles of students. The way that I envision the IBCC is I say it is perhaps slightly less broad, but it is no less deep than the IB diploma, because they only have to take 2 or 3 of the IB diploma classes as opposed to the 6 in the traditional IB diploma. Next slide. Just to talk a little bit about our career-related certificate, it started a couple of years ago, and we are very proud to say that we are one of 5 schools in the world now that offers all 4 IB programs, the IB, PYP, MYP, DP. And what a lot of schools will find, traditionally in my experience in the IB, is that many students will get to that MYP age and then they realize that they don't necessarily have all the academic resources for that diploma program. So we have the IBCC, which is an alternative, because we want to make sure that our curriculum provides an opportunity for all of our learners to be successful when they leave us. I think that we understand that the continuum, but as that was well described. If you would go just lastly to the last slide. The most important thing is choices and differentiation. We are an IB school because the IB lends itself very well, but you don't need to be an IB school in order to create a curriculum that meets the needs of all of your learners. The 2 core aspects of this are student choice. Is your school providing opportunities as your students particularly get older? Are they providing opportunities for students to meet their personal best? Or does everybody have to do the same thing? If everybody has to learn the same information, that's going to be challenging for most of your students. And it's going to marginalize those students on either end of the spectrum. From the videos that you saw earlier, if we were catering towards the middle, both the first young man and the second young man, they would not be getting the education that suits their needs to the best of their abilities. The other thing is, of course, differentiation. If teachers develop these practices of inquiry, as they were described in the primary years program, which is extended into the middle years program, if the teachers are spending the majority of their time talking as opposed to listening in the class, you're not having the differentiation that is going to meet the needs of all of our learners. We have to make sure that our students and our teachers have the resources and support in terms of our timetables, in terms of our curriculum, so that they can get to know each one of the students that they teach, trying wherever possible to limit the number of classes that are, that our senior teachers are teaching, so that they can teach more students the same sort of material, and they're not focusing on content, stuff to teach. They're focusing on how are all of my students learning the stuff that I teach. And that is what we really believe a curriculum to meet the needs of all learners is. At Greenfield Community School, we do that through a very strong IB philosophy as led by our principal, Ms. Angela Hollington. We'll take, I think that's anything. Would you like to show the video at the end, or you show it at the very end? Okay. We don't have sound.
That was really good.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, how do you adapt your unit to meet the profile of each student? Because it is, to me, a little bit difficult when you have a classroom of 20 students, let's say. And you work from each student's profile to have basically 20 profiles. So if we have units that are designed or pre-designed, how do you adapt them to meet the students' needs?
I'll pass that one to Bridget in the primary school.
I'd like to
see
say,
how
well,
that
let's start by saying what profile attributes are similar, and then what components are really noticeably different. So to address that, of course, it's in the planning process, and our grade levels plan together, and we also include our single subject teachers like PE, music, Arabic, French, German. We do collaboration as a whole program per grade level as well. So we take a look in all those lenses of the different teachers about these children.
Or maybe, so I'm sorry to interrupt you, maybe to say, from this student's profile, you develop what you like to write to a classroom profile.
I would say we would have a classroom profile and a grade level expectation, and then we look at our children individually, and we use our resources and our abilities and our understanding of the child to adapt and differentiate.
One of the other things we should also say is because English is our medium of instruction, and a lot of our children are at very, very different levels. We have an English as an additional language program, so some of the content is adapted for them and is worked on through with different teachers to support the children in their learning. So and assessment is done in different ways as well. So that which caters to the children's needs. And do you want to talk about the secondary school?
At the secondary level, there are basically two ways that we address that. First of all, we have to make sure that all of our teachers are very adept at understanding not what needs to be learned, but how their subject is best learned. And so if they understand that learning process really well, then they can create objectives for what will be learned in this lesson and how will it be learned in this lesson. And then what we do is we differentiate those objectives, which I'm sure you can see happen, where we say, all right, what is it that we want all of the students to know? And we have to make sure that that is basic enough that it can meet the needs of all of our learners. And then we have what will some students do in terms of extension, and then we have those very special circumstances. We want to make sure that the vast majority of our students are getting to that second level, but we want to push everybody to aspire towards that third level. So teachers have to stop thinking about the electron transport chain, and they have to start thinking about how is it that I'm going to teach this conceptually. I think that the beautiful example is what we saw with, Imagine Rain. And you can just picture all these young people sitting there coming up with all kinds of fantastic ideas about how to create rain. Then they brainstorm, and then of course there's going to be synthesis and there's an experiment. That is very much what we do at the secondary level. It's just that we will use more complex things. We get the kids to brainstorm, we get them to share their ideas, And we make sure that the teachers set those objectives very high, so at the end of the lesson they say, all right, did you all learn this? And then the homework process becomes, sometimes it's just random conversations. Please stand up. What did you learn today? What did you learn today? And the teacher will really be surveying and observing the degree to which the students are engaged and the degree to which they are managing this material. And we talk, lastly, just very much about that Lev Vygotsky idea of the zone of proximal development, where if a student's learning, they should be getting 50% of the material wrong and 50% of it right. If they're getting 80% of it right, it means that material's too easy and all the students have learned it. So that's not worth your time. If it's 20% and it's just too far out there, the students aren't. So we really focus on trying to get them into that cognitive conflict where they are learning. And then at the end of the lesson, we try and make sure that that has been learned.
I think if you just put together, very briefly, listening to where secondary students need to move from and go to. If you think about what I shared about primary, that's not possible without the foundation of what's happening at the primary years. So all of you that are teaching the younger children, you're obviously building up so that they can function and think and move forward in a much more sophisticated way. But it's that full continuum of education and personal development that takes them beyond us, beyond us.
How do you identify the type of learner a student is? Do you have any assessment tool?
Well, actually, I mean, I know many of us have had professional development around learning styles. And a lot of that's just student observation. So it wouldn't be that we would do necessarily a learning style assessment every year to identify the children. But when we also develop our portfolios, that parts of that will travel from year to year with the child. It shows developmentally, and we will see where those numbers are a natural component of that child's mind and where they gravitate to it. We end up doing so much observing and recognizing, and through some formal, but you know, to me, informal observation of our educators gives a great deal of knowledge about a child's learning styles. And also we learn when we run into difficulties with a child's learning and progress. Child's working this hard, but it's only getting here. Why? Maybe there's an auditory processing problem. Maybe there's a neurological issue. Maybe there's attention difficulties. And that's where we're also fortunate that we have special education teachers on our team, and we have structures in place to work with all the teachers with a child, work with the parents, work with an outside assessor, and really come back for that individual education plan where necessary.
Yeah, we adapt it very carefully. We look at the specific educational needs of our children, because obviously language is a big part of that. And if I could just show you something that one of our students made. This student has difficulties, and he's allowed us to show you this. This is a grade 10 student, German native speaker. He's diagnosed as dyslexic, and he's on the spectrum and all that. He has, for his personal project, for his MY, his middle years program, the culminating project at the end of the middle years, he actually wrote this book, and it's a novel, and he's published it like this. This was his project, and you know, when he talks about it, he's so engrossed in it. Now, this is a student that doesn't fit the mold. He just doesn't fit the mold, but he can produce something like that, which is quite amazing, really. We have another student, a similar thing with our students. Again, English as a second language student did a similar thing, got it together using something that he really likes doing, but he can be successful. So this is what I think education is all about, is looking to where the child has potential, moving it forward and developing it as much as you can through as many ways as you can. And these are, you know, these are the products. These are just some of the products that our children, our students have put out. But it's finding that child and moving them to where they can get to. And that's the important part of it.
If I could just join in there, I think the last thing is, the most important thing is collaboration. A collaborative learning environment within the classroom, of course, allowing students to explore their passions. And more importantly, starting with our principal all the way through ourselves, we have shared classroom observations. We're putting a program in the secondary called STEP, Sharing the Excellent Practice, which is a fantastic practice where teachers go and peer observe one another. So to answer your question, ma'am, you said, you know, well, what's the assessment tool? Well, it's not just one observation, but the more people that are in those classrooms and the more that those classrooms become collaborative learning environments, the easier it is for students to feel empowered And these are students who struggled mightily with their self-esteem. These are the types of students that would never say anything. They were very quiet, very docile in a class, would never put their hands up, yet they have extraordinary talents that the classroom environment and the learning environment has been able to empower them to attain their personal best. And so really, I think the best thing you can do if you wanted to understand what the students are, as opposed to using a myriad of psychometric tools and psychoanalytical tools, classroom observation, professional discourse, what is going on with this learner, where do they excel, what areas do they need help in, how can we create the conditions for them to be successful. And it can happen at a systemic level in terms of putting in special educational needs. It can happen at a very basic level where you just sit there and say, you know what, we're all going to be doing this project on this. Why don't you write yours in your native tongue, or any of those sorts of things. And sometimes it's appropriate to do that.
I think just one last comment about the power of collaboration. We mustn't forget about our parents of our children. And I have to say, from the primary level, especially with young children, that I'll go through the application process and I'll think, yes, 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 yes. And we get the school year started, it was like, yes, however. What is that? And the beauty of our system is the way we work, and we embrace our families, and we bring our families in, and we have the different members of the teaching staff that should be present during that, along with myself. And the way we partner with the parents, and that's challenging, especially if some of the needs are very serious needs. And how do you help bring the families along with that understanding and that acceptance, so you can get to making that individual plan that's going to help propel that child into the child's future. And we must never forget that's such a critical part beyond ourselves.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, much as it's important to observe children, I think it's very important for teachers to have anecdotal notes, because sometimes you observe, but then you're going to have 6 classes a day, and then you're going to meet up with, say, 20 in a class, 100 students a day, then how do you remember? So it's so important to have these anecdotal notes every time we go into a class.
Post-its.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, it needs to be passed on to the next teacher. That's so important. Otherwise, we can never really keep track of students' learning styles.
That's right. And then you start all over again the next year.
Yes.
You've lost all that information. So it's important to keep these records. And we have, as Bridget said, we have portfolios that are carried on, and discussions between the grade 5 and the grade 4 teachers that go on, obviously. That's very important. Because our children, I mean, we don't have children, we have very few children that have been with us for more than 5 years. Very few. So it's important that everything is yeah.
I think some curriculums like yours have differentiated assessments also. I mean, you have different levels of assessments. But for us, for instance, the Indian curriculum, we do adopt, differentiation in class. We adopt the VAC methods, the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic methods while we teach.
Yes.
We try to do differentiated objectives. We in fact do that. But then at the end of it, there's just that one exam that caters to all levels of learners. We don't have a differentiated examination system. And that's when we find it so difficult to actually implement the learner profile in class. I mean, it's easier said than done.
But I'd like to just share, we also have specific assessments we use for all of our children at each grade level, and we've worked diligently over the last 2 years to create those. So we don't test you differently than you, but it might be, if it's a severe learning difficulty, there's reason to give more time or another way. So just picture the majority of our students. We do our formative assessment, we do math assessment, we do reading assessments, we do it every term. So we're patterning, or following, I should say, the continuum of progress, or if it limits or reduces or leaps far forward, we know, again, coming back to your comments, sir.
Approach, which is the IB approach. Am I right?
Yes,
I-
so
I'd say so, yeah.
if you want to develop
Yeah.
your student as communicators,
Right.
then you allow them to communicate
Yes,
in
right.
class. It's that simple. If you want them to be risk takers in their
Right.
learning, you don't give them the answers. You give them the resources where they can take risks and those sorts of things.
Yeah, that's the approach of the curriculum.
That's right.
That's right.
Whereas this is the
Learning
learning-
styles is
yeah.
different, yes.
Yeah.
That's
The-
one thing which I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify,
Thank you.
because I thought there was confusion there.
Thank
I see. Thank you for that.
Second thing is, which you just spoke about, differentiation in the classroom, which the teacher does in terms of implementing the curriculum, and whereas the assessment is the standardized one. Now, one thing which I understand as a curriculum coordinator, and which I feel would like to just state here, is differentiation is for every child to learn.
Yes.
And as a curriculum, we need to have a standard set of learning outcomes.
That's right.
Because that is what we want our students to know and able to do.
Our target.
Irrespective of their ability.
Correct.
That's our target.
Yeah.
So differentiation in the classroom happens so that all my types of learners are able to learn in their own way, their own flexible way, but achieve a final outcome that is constant.
That's
And
correct.
that's why our assessments need to be standardized to those outcomes. So that's why we have the end of term or the summatives that we have.
Yes.
But we also assess for different
Yeah,
things.
so
Yes.
the
It's not
formative
just-
ones, yeah. The
And
formative
I
ones
have-
which are required in their process of learning is the ones which will be differentiated.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right, yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
last question, because we're,
Okay. Do students with special educational needs take also the benchmarking or assessment plus other modified assessments, or
yes.
with the severe ones, let's say, or with external assessments?
We do both. It depends on the child. It depends what we're
Yeah.
assessing for.
But
They do
let's
the
say-
they'll do a diagnostic assessment to see, for example, where the reading age is.
Yeah.
And it, as I say, it really depends on the child. It really, it's very focused on
Yeah.
what does that child need and what are we testing for? What is it we want to know about that child?
And if I
Can
may-
be exempted from,
Yes, yeah.
can be.
What we do at the secondary level is we will always give them, you know, if it's appropriate to do so, we'll give them a modified assessment. They are expected to meet the same standards. So if everyone else has an assessment, we don't say, well, no, you don't have an assessment because you have very specific learning styles. We will change that assessment based on the learning needs of that individual. It will either be modified, some students just need more time for the same assessment, some students need a scribe so that they can dictate what will be written down, that is written down for them. It is about the learning needs of every individual student, and you know, it does have some implication when you get to that output, you know, who goes into the IBCC, who goes into the IB diploma. Do we expect that the students will qualify for those diplomas when they come out? Those are the conversations that we have, but we have a school that does its very best to meet the needs of every one of our learners as an individual.
How many students do you have in the lower grade?
700.
730,
No, inside the classroom, what is the ratio?
25 top, 25 maximum at the KG 1 and 2 and grade 1. They also have full-time assistants, one, so it's called 2 adults to the 25 children. Then once you move into grade 2, there are no additional support.
No, that's KG 1 and 2, then it's 25 without the,
entire school, what is the strength?
1117, I think.
Yes, thereabouts.
Ma'am, when you talk of collaborative teaching, what do you prefer, homogeneous groups or heterogeneous groups?
It depends.
1,100 students,
depends
yes.
on what it is you want to teach. I think we have to stop there, so thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you very much.